Ladies and gentlemen, every human being alive today is born with the same 24 hours in a day, the same brain built from billions of neurons, and the same nervous system that fires and adapts to the challenges we face. Yet some people rise and carve empires out of nothing but vision and grit, while others spend their entire lives explaining, sometimes eloquently, why it couldn't be done in their case. That gap, that dividing line, is not intelligence, not luck, not birthright. It's whether a person chooses to focus on results or excuses. And make no mistake, excuses are not harmless. Excuses are brain chemistry at work. Excuses are neural pathways built from repetition. Excuses are the mind's addiction to comfort disguised as logic. When we look at neuroscience, the brain is fundamentally a prediction machine. It conserves energy by running old scripts instead of engaging in new action. The moment you hesitate, your brain rushes in with a preloaded file, reasons to stall, justifications to avoid pain, elegant explanations for why you are not yet moving. And here's the brutal truth. Your brain doesn't care about your greatness. It cares about survival. Excuses are survival-based narratives, but results are evidence that you have overridden those old neural circuits and created new ones by action. Every time you execute instead of explain, you literally rewire your brain toward growth, resilience, and performance. Consider the patient who has suffered a stroke. In those first critical weeks, they are faced with a choice: push through therapy that is excruciatingly difficult, or surrender to the comfort of inactivity. I have watched men and women relearn how to walk, to speak, to hold a spoon. Not because it was easy, but because they refused to excuse their injury as a permanent prison. The science is clear. Neuroplasticity allows the brain to remap functions when effort and persistence are applied. But neuroplasticity also works in the other direction. If you consistently tell yourself, "I can't," the brain locks that belief into the system until it becomes true in practice. Excuses are neuroplastic lies you've rehearsed into permanence. Now, let's bring this out of the hospital and into daily life. How many of you here have said, "I don't have time"? It's the most common excuse in modern society. Yet, you will binge watch an entire season of a show. You will scroll your phone for hours. You will linger in distraction. Neuroscience tells us that time perception is tied to attention. When you claim you don't have time, what you really mean is, "I have misallocated my attention." Results don't care about your feelings toward time. Results come when you take those exact hours and direct them toward execution. The harshness of reality is liberating. Time is not the issue, focus is. I once worked with a young entrepreneur who came to me with a dozen reasons why his business wasn't growing. He blamed the market, the investors, his competitors, even his family background. Every session, he stacked excuses like bricks, building a wall between himself and progress. One day I asked him, "If every excuse you've named suddenly vanished, would you actually be ready to execute?" He went silent. Because the truth was, the obstacle wasn't external, it was his tolerance for his own delay. Within a year of redirecting his mental energy from reasons into results, he tripled his revenue. Not because the world changed, but because he changed the story he told himself. Here's what the research shows. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that governs decision-making and execution, is strengthened through action. The more you decide and follow through, the stronger those neural circuits become. Excuses, however, light up the default mode network, the same network responsible for daydreaming and wandering. That's why excuses feel comfortable. They're mental autopilot, but results require deliberate energy, uncomfortable decisions, and the willingness to burn glucose in the brain to fuel new connections. Excuses save energy now, but they cost you everything later. Think about professional athletes. The difference between those who make it to the highest level and those who don't is rarely raw talent. It's the daily, merciless discipline to execute, even when the body screams for rest. They train in rain and cold and pain, and yet the excuses available to them are infinite. Injuries, fatigue, unfair referees, bad weather, unsupportive families. The world would happily validate those excuses. But greatness is born only in the silence where excuses are refused. What remains is results. And those results inspire entire nations. There's also an emotional side to this. Excuses often come dressed as self-protection. People fear failure, and so they create a shield of justification. I wasn't prepared. I didn't have enough resources. The timing wasn't right. But here's the irony. Excuses don't protect you from failure. They guarantee it. Failure, it's feedback. The brain learns through error correction. A child falls hundreds of times before walking, but the child doesn't build excuses. They keep getting up. Adults, however, with all our intelligence, wrap ourselves in excuses, pretending that makes us safe. It doesn't. It makes us small. Ladies and gentlemen, when you look back at the end of your life, you won't measure it in the elegance of your excuses. You will measure it in the evidence of your results. Did you build? Did you change? Did you serve? Did you leave behind something that outlives you? That's what matters. Science confirms that the human brain is designed for adaptation, but whether it adapts upward or downward depends on the choices you reinforce. Excuses wire you for weakness, results wire you for strength. I've seen leaders rise from poverty with nothing but relentless execution. I've also seen individuals with every advantage collapse under the weight of their own rationalizations. The difference is not fate, it is focus. One chooses to stare at the mountain of reasons why not. The other locks eyes on the summit and climbs, one brutal step at a time. And the brain, marvelously, follows whichever pattern you repeat. You must understand, your brain doesn't care whether you become extraordinary or ordinary. It simply reflects what you consistently do. If you feed it excuses, it will build you a reality where excuses rule. If you feed it execution, it will carve neural highways for decisive, relentless action. That is the essence of neuroplasticity. It is indifferent, but it is obedient. It follows your lead. So ask yourself, are you leading your brain, or is your brain leading you? Because the brain left on autopilot will drift toward comfort, and comfort is the breeding ground of excuses. You must become the conscious architect of your own neural destiny. That requires execution. Not once, not when it's convenient, but relentlessly. Execution in the morning when your body aches. Execution when the deal falls apart. Execution when nobody believes in you. Because each time you execute, you reinforce a network of resilience that will carry you through storms. The world doesn't reward explanations. It rewards results. When history books are written, they don't list the excuses of the defeated. They list the achievements of the relentless. Every empire, every breakthrough, every revolution was built by people who refused to narrate reasons and instead chose to act again and again until the impossible bent into reality. And so the choice stands before each of you right now. Excuses or results? Your brain will follow whichever you repeat. Your life will bear the fruit of whichever you choose. What most people don't realize is that excuses are not merely words, they are biochemical. Every time you rationalize your inaction, your brain releases chemicals that give you temporary relief. You feel justified, you feel safe, you feel understood, even if only by yourself. That little surge of dopamine, that tiny trickle of comfort is addictive. And so, excuses become a drug. They trick you into thinking you're making progress when in reality, you're standing still. The results, on the other hand, do not give you instant comfort. They demand pain, sweat, persistence, and sometimes humiliation. But once achieved, results rewire the brain to crave challenge instead of avoidance. The neurochemical cocktail of serotonin, dopamine, and endorphins that floods your system when you achieve something real is infinitely more powerful than the cheap hit of self-justification. Think of soldiers who return from combat. Many of them will tell you that in the heat of the moment, they had no room for excuses. Lives depended on execution. Later, when they reflect, they realize that their minds were sharper, more focused, more alive than ever. Why? Because the brain, under pressure and stripped of excuses, shifts into a state of pure execution. Excuses cloud that state. Excuses fracture clarity. The science of stress shows us that when harnessed, stress hormones like cortisol can heighten focus and sharpen response. But when you pair stress with excuses, the mind collapses into helplessness instead of action. That is why some individuals grow stronger under adversity while others fall apart. It's not the adversity, it's the presence or absence of excuses. In my years of working with leaders, athletes, patients, and entrepreneurs, I have seen a consistent pattern. The most successful people are not those with the fewest challenges. They are those with the fewest excuses. They are ruthless with themselves. They understand that every time they justify, they erode their edge. Excuses are erosion of character. Excuses eat away at self-respect. You can't look in the mirror and respect yourself if you know deep down that your mouth is busier than your hands. Respect is earned in execution. There's a fascinating study on regret in aging populations. Researchers asked elderly individuals what they regretted most in their lives. Overwhelmingly, it wasn't the failures, it was the things they didn't try, the risks they excused away. The human brain, late in life, becomes painfully aware of its own avoidance, and the bitterness of what if haunts more deeply than the sting of failure ever could. Imagine yourself decades from now looking back. Will you be proud of your results or suffocated by your excuses? That is not a question of circumstance, it is a question of choice. Even in medicine, I've seen this divide. Two patients diagnosed with the same illness. One decides to fight with every ounce of energy, executing the treatment plan, adapting lifestyle, attacking the disease with grit. The other leans into excuses. It's too late, it's too hard, I can't change now. Months later, one is recovering and the other is deteriorating. Was it biology? Partly, but biology responds to behavior. Cells respond to signals. The immune system strengthens with disciplined choices. Execution is not just about money or business, it is life and death. Excuses weaken the body, results strengthen it. Let's not ignore the emotional element here. Many excuses are born from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of humiliation. But fear, neurologically, is simply your amygdala firing. It's a survival alarm, not a prophecy. Fear doesn't mean stop. Fear means pay attention. Yet most people translate fear into paralysis. They cover paralysis with excuses so it looks respectable. But the high achievers translate fear into fuel. They feel the same pounding heart, the same sweaty palms, but instead of hiding, they execute. And through that execution, they recondition their nervous system to stop fearing fear. That is emotional mastery. That is where growth begins. You see the pattern here? Excuses feed your weaknesses, execution feeds your strengths. One is instant relief, the other is long-term transformation. The brain adapts to whatever you repeat. And so the fundamental question becomes, what story are you rehearsing? Because every excuse you voice is a rehearsal. Every excuse is a script you're burning into your neural fabric. If you don't interrupt that cycle, you will live the same year 1,000 times and call it a life. I'll tell you a story that still shakes me. The man I once coached had grown up in brutal poverty. His father abandoned him, his mother struggled with addiction, and by all accounts, society would have forgiven him if he never amounted to anything. But he refused excuses. He said, I may not control how I started, but I will damn well control how I finish. So he worked jobs nobody else wanted, studied late in the night, built skills brick by brick, and eventually founded a company that employed hundreds. Years later, he came back and told me, the day I stopped excusing my past was the day my future began. That's the power of refusing excuses. And yet, I've also seen the opposite. Talented individuals with wealthy backgrounds, resources, connections, everything at their fingertips, destroyed by excuses. The economy is bad. The investors don't get it. I'll start when the timing is right. Do you know what happens to timing when you wait for it to be perfect? It rots. Opportunities are perishable. Excuses are expiration dates on dreams. Ladies and gentlemen, let me be very clear. Execution doesn't mean you won't fail. In fact, you will fail, often. But each failure carries data. Each mistake carries wisdom. The brain learns not by avoidance, but by error correction. Synapses strengthen when you make a mistake and then adjust. Excuses rob you of that adjustment. Excuses leave you blind to feedback. Excuses tell you the failure wasn't yours, so you never learn. Execution, even when messy, keeps you in the arena, and the arena is where growth happens. The world outside these walls doesn't care how you explain your inaction. It rewards only the fruits of execution. Do you think the farmer excuses away a bad harvest? No. He plants again, he adapts, he changes the soil, he tries new methods. The farmer knows results feed his family, not explanations. Why should your life be any different? It's right now, in this very room, some of you are carrying excuses like prized possessions. You think they protect you, but they are chains. And the longer you hold them, the deeper they rust into your soul. The only way to break them is execution. Small or large, it doesn't matter. Execution is the hammer that smashes excuses. So I challenge you, think of the area in your life where you've been talking more than doing, where your justifications have outpaced your results. And then ask yourself, what would happen if today you acted without excuse? How would your brain rewire? How would your life transform? Because science, history, and human experience all scream the same truth. Excuses change nothing. Execution changes everything. And the day you finally understand that, not just in theory, but in action, will be the day your life begins to shift from potential to power, from hesitation to history. Let me bring this down to the most intimate level possible. Imagine a child watching their parent. The child sees not what the parent says, but what the parent does. If the parent is constantly making excuses, too tired to play, too busy to listen, too distracted to lead, the child learns that excuses are acceptable currency in life. But if that same parent shows up even when exhausted, even when stressed, even when imperfect, the child learns that results matter more than rationalizations. Excuses are inherited, but so is execution. You are not only shaping your own destiny, you are wiring the generations that follow you. What you tolerate in yourself becomes a standard for everyone watching. Neuroscience teaches us that mirror neurons fire when we observe the actions of others. That means your excuses don't just weaken you, they weaken everyone influenced by you. But your execution, it inspires, it ignites, it spreads. Execution is contagious. Think of great leaders in history. They didn't sit behind podiums listing reasons why something couldn't be done. They acted, and in their action, they pulled millions into motion. The brain is wired to follow boldness. When you execute, you're not just changing your own brain, you're reshaping the neural patterns of everyone who witnesses you. Now, some of you may be wondering, how do I begin? How do I shift from a lifetime of rehearsed excuses into a pattern of results? The answer is brutally simple. You start small, but you start now. Execution is not a personality trait, it is a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it becomes. Do the thing you've been postponing for months. Make the phone call you've avoided. Wake up at the hour you've promised yourself. Every tiny act of execution is a brick in the fortress of results. And as those bricks stack higher, your brain begins to default toward action instead of avoidance. Momentum is not a miracle, it is manufactured. The tragedy is that most people will die with more excuses than results. Their headstones might as well read, "Here lies potential, never executed." But it doesn't have to be that way for you. You have the capacity to rewire, to redirect, to reshape. I don't care if you're 20 or 70, rich or broke, educated or self-taught, execution is available to all. Excuses discriminate. Results liberate. There is one last truth I want you to carry from this room. The world remembers execution, always. When you think of the great scientists, inventors, leaders, artists, you don't think of the nights they doubted themselves. You don't think of the excuses they could have made. You think of the bridge they built, the discovery they made, the movement they sparked. Results echo across time. Excuses dissolve into silence. So I'll leave you with this. The next time your brain offers you a reason to wait, to stall, to explain, interrupt it. Replace it with one act of execution. Train yourself step by step to value evidence over explanation. And one day, you will wake up and realize that excuses no longer have a home in your mind. That your life is no longer a collection of unfinished intentions, but a monument of executed decisions. That you have become the kind of person whose legacy will not be measured in words, but in results. Because at the end of the day, there are only two kinds of lives, those built on excuses and those built on results. And the world belongs, always has, and always will, to those who choose results. Now go and execute